Fearless and truthful.
Provocative and controversial.
We say it like it really is.
With dignity and respect.
Committed to free speech and common sense. Upbeat and entertaining.
Straight talking and direct.
We may agitate each other and you.
Thought-provoking, provocative and controversial.
Hello and welcome to The Pledge. Well, the summer holidays are finally here. And for my fellow weary Pledge panellists, it can't come soon enough. Michelle is off to Hull to visit the family. June's taking to the Sun Lounger to do some quiet reading, probably of her own book. Majid is swapping the turtlenecks for the budgie smugglers and is heading to the beach. And Rachel, well, Rachel doesn't care where she goes, as long as it's as far away from us as possible. Coming up, Michelle addresses the buzz around the waspy women. Majid says we need to stop playing politics in tackling gang culture. Rachel takes on the rise of the far right, and June says the change has got to come for equality at music festivals. But first, it's me. Alexander Coty and Shafi el-Sheikh belong to one of ISIS' most notorious killing gangs. These monsters were members of the murderous death cult that crucified people, buried women and children alive, used them as suicide bombers, burned men in cages and proudly hacked people's heads off in full view of the world. Yet the government's been criticised for not demanding these savages won't face execution if they're tried in the US. Look, I don't want to see the death penalty back here, but I do believe, in rare cases, there is a moral justification for it. And this is one of those cases. If these two men, who aren't even British citizens anymore, are executed in the US, I believe it will actually save lives. They won't be able to kill and torture innocent people, and they won't be around to incite or command others to do it, which is exactly what would happen if they were in prison here. So, yes, let America have them, because it's an affront to British taxpayers if they're asked to pay millions to keep these monsters safe in prison. And if they are executed, I won't shed any tears. It's two less animals hacking the heads of innocent people.
So, Carol, I understand the emotions behind this. It really is something that all of us feel that these people deserve every form of justice thrown at them. But I think it's precisely for that reason, at times like this, when we want to see people suffer for the crimes that they've committed against innocents, that we should stop, pause a moment, take a deep breath, and just remember the dangers in moments like this to everybody else's civil liberties. There are a few instances where national security, and it usually is national security, are used as a thin end of the wedge to eventually chip away at all of our civil liberties, and that's my main concern. I think it happened with detention without trial. It happened as a result, by the way, Schedule 7, the terrorism laws, were then used to stop Lauren Southern, who's not a terrorist, from entering this country. I disagree with a lot of what she stands for, but she certainly shouldn't have been stopped under the country's...
You know it. No, this is entirely
hold on, Carol,
different.
let me make my point. I'm talking about the thin end of the wedge being then used to extend terrorism laws using national security against all of our civil liberties. It happened with Lauren Southern. Detention without trial. It happened with the extradition to America that was non-reciprocal. It was meant to extradite terrorists to the States. We ended up with bankers with autism being sent to America. It happened with data.
Majid, you listened to the intro. You know that these guys were part of one of the most notorious gangs, the most savage gangs.
I don't think you're listening to the point.
I am listening to your point.
I'm saying that once we allow this under the guise of national security to apply to terrorists, it ends up being extended to other people. And I've cited examples to you where it has happened.
I've heard them. Two things. These guys are not British citizens anymore. They are likely to be tried in America. They have the death penalty. It's not for us to interfere with them.
For me, it's not about them.
But it is about them.
No, it's not about them.
And it's about
it's about our Home Secretary cooperating legally with the United States of America and not demanding that people...
Why should he demand it? They're not British citizens anymore. They're nothing to do with us anymore.
I'll tell you why.
And they chose not to.
It's nothing to do with them. The Home Secretary traditionally has been bound...
What do you think is going to happen here?
When we legally cooperate with a country, the Home Secretary is usually obliged to seek assurances that that cooperation doesn't lead to execution. Yes. Now, that assurance
it's not going to happen here, Majid. You're not listening. You're not listening to what I said, and that I don't want the death penalty brought back here. I don't. But actually, for these guys, you know, the Policy Exchange think tank says it was piece in the paper yesterday said they want to bring back the ancient law of treason and actually apply it to returning jihadis. You know, the guy who used to review our terrorist laws said returning jihadis are the biggest threat to this country in decades. And why do we care about these men? I don't care what happens to these men.
We know you don't care.
Really don't.
What do you think?
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, if Sajid Javid thought this was such an honourable thing to do, why did he do it in secrecy? Secondly, the thing that we also have to take into consideration, and I know you're not going to like me saying this, but I think part of the reason that we are even agreeing to this is because of Brexit, because we're so scared of standing up to America right now that we allow them to do anything.
Are we forgetting the victims
How are
of
we
these men?
losing our principles?
We're not losing principles.
This is something that's decades old. We have always sought assurances from the US. So why now, under these circumstances, are we doing something else? And the other thing, just to add to that, is can I bring in a statement from Amnesty International? And what they have to say, this is from Alan Hogarth, who's head of advocacy and programmes. And he says, while the alleged crimes of Alexander Coty and Shafi El-Sheikh are appalling, the UK's principled opposition to the cruelty of the death penalty isn't something it should compromise. Capital punishment is the ultimate denial of life. It is always cruel and unnecessary. It doesn't deter crime, and it means that rehabilitation is not an option.
One, I think he's wrong, because I think there are some crimes so heinous that but I want to read you I want to show you a grab, actually, from the two jihadis that we're actually talking about. Just look at the arrogance of these two guys here. Watch them.
Don't think that the death penalty is on the table because of the places where it's been said we would face trial. It's not reasonable that they would give the death penalty in those circumstances.
I think it's fairly reasonable in an expectation that it could happen in the United States. Is there any you worried about that?
I'm not really worried that if people were actually adhering to their principles, which is someone's not guilty until proven, with evidence, I have no fear.
You know, these guys have the nerve to talk about not reasonable. I know you guys are talking about a principle and a moral here, but not all murders are the same. These guys didn't commit a crime against a person or a few people. They were crimes against humanity. They set out to destroy the Western civilization in the most cruel,
No one is making any
way
excuses for what they've done. It's about who we are as a nation.
So should we just have a quick look? Because for me, why we've not brought them here is because you know, Sajid Javid has no belief that actually if they came back here they would face a proper trial, they wouldn't be prosecuted. So if we just look at this, there is 425 ISIS members that have returned to the UK. Approximately 50 of those have been convicted of any crime. And to me, this is the real travesty, because as you just heard that guy there say, he's saying, well, if there's evidence and I'm found guilty, then whatever. He knows, and everybody knows, that if he was brought back to the UK, he wouldn't be prosecuted. They would be allowed to wander around.
This does rest on evidence, though, guys.
Yeah, but
so with those returnees, I think the issue is that is there the evidence to prosecute them? Now, in the case with these two, we have been cooperating with the Americans gathering this evidence, and the point I was making is I think all of us agree that these two have committed some evil deeds. The issue is not about them, it's about what it's doing to us. How do we deal with evil?
We're not going to be doing anything,
compromise our principles of morality?
We're going to let America deal with them. We're not actually doing anything.
Well, an absence of doing something in terms of what we used to do all the time is seek assurance.
And let's face it, they're not British citizens anymore. They're nothing to do with us.
Carol, there are sins of commission, there are sins of omission, and in this instance, we are in danger of committing a sin of omission.
We're not going to bring...
Shall we hear from the mother of one of the victims, Diane Foley? And she's cast an interesting light on this, which is that actually execution is, in a way, too good for them. It will serve their own purposes.
They'll become martyrs.
They will become martyrs, and they will therefore radicalise others. Let's hear from Diane Foley, mother of James Foley. I think that would just make them martyrs in their twisted ideology. I would like them held accountable by being sent to prison for the rest of their lives. Jim was always one that wanted everyone to have the benefit of the doubt. Jim was always one who wanted justice in the fairest sense. I think that, you know, we descend to their level if we turn the trial and punishment of even jihadi terrorists into an eye for an eye. This is not who we are
descend
as
to
a
their
country.
level? How could you or anyone on this table ever descend to their level? And if you're talking about relatives, David Haynes, who was executed...
This is what they want.
OK, well,
they want us all to descend into a barbaric...
David Haynes, who was executed in front of the world, his daughter Bethany said, I hope they die a long, slow, painful death. We have to listen to what those relatives say, because they're the ones that's important here. The victims are the people that are important here, not what you guys think about justice.
They are important, but the justice system is important. Civilised laws are important.
To quote Diane Abbott, I must at this stage give credit where...
Leave Diane Abbott alone!
Give credit where credit is due, because she says something quite interesting on this. Ever watch what she says?
I put it to ministers, they cannot be a little bit in favour of the death penalty. Either we offer consistent opposition or we don't.
So I just want to say that having studied Islamist ideology and jihadist theory in detail, I can assure you that not that this affects 100% of how we think about it, but they certainly, ISIS and other jihadists, do want us to abandon our principles. They want to eliminate what they call the grey zone, and they want us to retreat and become more and more medieval in how we deal with them.
But Diane also mentioned...
Which will radicalise more people.
She mentioned about a breach of human rights. To me, there's no grey area. You either respect human rights or you don't. And if you don't respect human rights and you'll kill, torture, behead, you negate your right to have your human rights respected. And I want to just pick up on your point, June, because I agree and disagree with you. I strongly disagree with you that this has got anything to do with Brexit, and I'm astonished that you've managed to link that.
I think we are frightened to stand up to America.
But I do find it quite interesting that this was done in secret. I don't think it demonstrates a policy change, but I do think, well, why was it done in quiet?
Because they know it's wrong, that's why.
Do you know, June, if you did a straw poll in this country, everyone would vote to bring back the death penalty for those people.
Murderers shouldn't have legal representation because, you know, they're murderers.
Do you know what? In the cases of jihadis who we know have killed thousands of people, maybe not. I don't think Western justice should apply. Why do you think that's funny? You're laughing in the face of people being slaughtered. Yes, you are. And when Diane Abbott says...
You're so binary.
I'm not binary.
It's the slippery
when she says
slope.
you can't be a little bit
against... what I was trying to say at the beginning.
There are different kinds of murders. We're not going on any slippery slope. We've just given America some evidence to help convict these guys. That's all we've done.
And we did the same with extradition.
We're not executing anybody. It's there in their country.
Where are America's concerned? Sorry.
We're not going to agree, are we? We're not going to agree. So let's move on and talk about my mum instead. Because one of the people I love more than anyone in this world is my mum. She was born in the 50s, and like many her age, she started work aged 15 and expected to retire and start receiving her state pension at 60. That women retired at 60 and men at 65 was an understanding woven into society for decades. But in 1995, the pension age was equalised for men and women to be 65. While there was some communication, it's fair to say it was inadequate, leaving many women unaware. This was compounded in 2011 when the timetable for this change was accelerated and the pension age rose again. This means that many women approach their 60th birthday expecting to retire, only to find out they had to carry on working for several more years. It threw many of their retirement plans into disarray. Now, I'm all for equality, but I truly believe that many women were unfairly affected by these changes, which seem to be ill-considered, unfairly implemented and poorly communicated. So it's time for the government to stop and listen to their concerns. Oh, and as for my mum, by the time she retires, she's going to be almost 67.
Michelle, as you know, I am a passionate feminist, but I definitely am not when it comes to this issue. I do not want equality where retirement is concerned. I completely agree with you. I think the way it's been handled it's just been an absolute shambles. And actually, the thing isn't about equalising the age of retirement, is about the preparation and the amount of time that people were given to know about these changes and prepare for them. So I'm with you. And what I found really fascinating is I think the government is going to have to do something about this, because this group are totally organised, aren't they, and mobilised. And I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, so...
May I suggest, considering men die earlier than women...
And
women
we
live,
have the menopause. The menopause alone means we should be allowed to retire.
Because women live far longer than men, I think that perhaps women should retire at an age older than we men.
Oh!
We die sooner.
You are.
Get off the show now.
So I think, can I just, at this stage, bring in the Department for Work and Pensions, not to defend what's going on, but that's because it's, they have a right to reply to this, and they have said that as we are all living considerably longer, we need to adjust the pension age to ensure the sustainability of the state pension now and for future generations. We have thoroughly reviewed the options for equalising the state pension age, listening to concerns along the way. As a result, we have spent an extra £1.1 billion to ensure that nobody will reach the state pension more than 18 months beyond when they would have done under the 1995 Pensions Act timetable.
You know, I mean, I should declare now I'm a WASPie. I'm sure you all knew that anyway. And I had no idea about these pension changes. And I'm one of the lucky ones.
Didn't you?
No, I didn't. I knew about it about 2 years ago. But I'm one of the lucky ones in that I'm still working. There are a lot of women in their early 60s who don't have the luxury of that, whose job came to an end at a certain age. Those women will never work again. Those women will not get jobs. And if they do get jobs again, it'll be filling supermarket shelves. It'll be doing something that's not terribly good for them.
Well, they're often told to get an apprenticeship.
Well,
I've heard them.
Well, I mean, that's just stupid. And,
I know.
And I think I calculated what I may have lost by not getting the pension at 60, and it's actually 40 grand.
Yeah, it's
so far, I would have lost that.
Wow.
Now, you know, I just think this government and previous ones, they're forever clubbering people in their 60s. You know,
coalition.
I think it's interesting.
It wasn't a coalition government.
No,
it's been successive governments. This has gone on
It is,
for such a long time.
I think it's easy to get lost in the sort of numbers and the detail and how many women are losing what. And actually, what I find interesting about this and saddening is that it's really a story of the history of women in the workforce and the fact that the reason women retired at 60 is a lot of them didn't have jobs anyway to retire from, and then at 60 they got a little bit of money from if they'd paid their NICs, their national insurance stamp. And now it's interesting because
we're being penalised again.
But we've got to take care of it.
No, because when the government is looking to make savings, they say we're going to go after women because women don't pay attention to their finances. They won't notice this has happened. And this is what's happened.
They go after women.
These women.
They go after women.
Well,
and, you know, one of the really sad facts for me is we have the biggest number of people at the moment, and a lot of them are women, who exist on nothing but the state pension. And the average state pension a week is 122 quid. I mean, that is shocking. You know, that's less than you would get if you were on the dole.
So there's talk of some sort of bridging arrangement. So the women whose pension can be non-existent for those 5 or 6 years they thought, they can get something to make up for it? I mean, what is the actual proposal?
Shall we give you a case study? Because there's a lady here, let's call her Sue, and she really goes into detail in terms of her circumstances. And what she says is, I was born in 1954, I always worked part-time, started paying into local government pension scheme in '86, and planned and expected my state pension at 60 in 2014. In 2011, I was made redundant due to austerity and urged to take early retirement on the grounds that I would get my pension at 60 in 2014. In 2012, I got a letter from DEWBERRY informing me my state pension date had been deferred to 2020. Wow. I never would have taken redundancy if I'd have known this. The 1995 Pension Act and the acceleration of the 2011 Pension Act has meant I've been affected twice without due notice to make other arrangements for my retirement. I will have to sell my home. I've been discriminated against due to my date of birth and gender. Now, why I feel so strongly, and I feel so strongly about this, women's mental health has been deeply affected because of this. And you say that this group is mobilised, but actually I worry for this group because they're not mobilised because
what
actually...
I'm seeing they are, though.
No, actually what's happened, you've got many fragmented groups campaigning for many fragmented different outcomes. You've got people that want to have everything paid back to the age of 60 and all the rest of it. You've got some people that just want bridging. And I worry for these people because what they do need, and they need it incredibly quickly, is a single voice, one voice, where they come together, they determine what their aids are, and they take legal action against the government, because I feel so strongly that they were...
I think that the Guy Opperman, who is the government minister responsible, has already said that it's a done deal and they can't ask...
That's what I was going to say.
...the younger generation to pay for the old women.
Is there any solution on the horizon?
Can we hear from the chairman of the WASPie Action Group, who is called Pat Tartellin.
The WASPI campaign is fighting on behalf of 1950s-born women whose state pension age was changed up to 6 years with little or no notice. Some women never even received a letter from the DWP and arrived at their 60th birthday to find they had to wait a further 6 years before they received their state pension.
It's a real lesson, isn't it? When you get those brown envelopes, open them, read them, read the small print.
Some of them never received
This is what I'm saying.
Didn't get one.
These guys, so many of these ladies, and this is what I finished on, they were not informed. You cannot be told for decades that you will retire at 60 and then have it changed with no notice.
From later retirement age to, unfortunately, earlier death rates, we've got to move on. Because youth in London are being murdered by their gang rivals at an unprecedented rate. Almost half of murder victims and suspects in the capital are young black men, grossly disproportionate to London's population, which is 13% black. Many of these young men are children of trauma, born into inner-city poverty and broken homes with absent fathers and scant opportunity. They are also pawns sacrificed to our country's archaic prohibition on drugs, which artificially inflates prices through criminalisation, creating a lucrative market feeding dreams of a future escaping poverty, feeling just within reach until you're murdered. Leave the embarrassing campaigns to ban drill rap and the opportunistic race baiting of some for electioneering purposes. Let's get real. The political ping-pong being played by London's mayor and the Home Office over who's to blame is grating. Bad parenting, cuts to local police, to mentoring schemes, youth services and to extracurricular programmes after school and overdue drugs reform all contribute. Let there be no doubt, if these were privately educated middle-class kids, London's murder rate would have been addressed a long time ago.
So I share your concerns and I also share your frustrations in terms of this has become a political ping-pong. You've got Sadiq saying, well, it's not my fault, it's the police cuts, and that really frustrates me. But what also really, really frustrates me is the fact that no one seems to focus on the word choice. When you choose to enter a gang, and already two of my fellow panellists have inhaled. When you choose to enter a gang, and don't be mistaken, it is a choice, and it is a choice that is not going to end well. And all too often we talk about broken homes, abuse, poverty, lack of work experience. I am a product of a home that is a broken home, that is an abusive home. My sister, and I hate to admit this, it hurts me, my sister used heroin. She worked as a prostitute, and I made a choice. I was on an estate, my boyfriend was in and out of prison, my friends were, with all due respect, no hopers, and I made a choice. I didn't have someone taking me by the hand and leading me over there. I didn't have someone offering me money or anything. I made the choice, and the choice that I made was the right one. And we'll talk about, because Sky did a great documentary. Let's look at one of these guys. I think he calls himself K1. Let's listen to what he said.
I can see a guy over there, and because I don't like him, I could go and stab him. It's not, we don't even actually put it as a gang. It's a family. It's not a gang, it's a family. We're all groups of boys. We all grew up on the same estate. We all went to school together. If one of his gang members did something to one of my gang members, all of his side of his gang, I'll be after all of you lot, and all of my gang will be after you lot. Because you lot disrespected one of my family members.
So what I'll say is this, two things. Firstly, they look ridiculous. I cannot stand these people. You're getting, I know you want to move on, but I want to say these guys, they expect respect. They're sitting there saying, if you disrespect me, then I'm going to stab you.
I'm going to defend gangs and affiliation to gangs. What I am going to say is that the choice that you refer to, some people make it at 13 years old, some make it at 14 years old. I think we need to zoom out a bit sometimes and understand that children are being radicalised into a life of crime through gangs, and actually it's in our interests. Because the path to criminal radicalisation involves grooming, similar to extremist radicalisation. It involves older men mentoring younger men. And all I want to say is that it's whether or not these 13-year-olds are making...
the younger guys as well, robbers on mopeds.
And running drugs and all sorts of things. Now all I'm saying is to zoom out a minute, it's important for the rest of us that we actually look at solutions, because 13-year-olds making wrong choices doesn't actually solve the problem for us.
Can I just say a couple of... First of all, this issue completely breaks my heart. I think the amount of untapped potential that is being lost because of what's happening to these young men. And I just want to pick up on a couple of things that you said, Michelle. So you've described your background and the horrific ordeals that you experienced as a child. But what I would say to you is the majority of people who come from a similar background to yours end up the way your sister ended up. You are the exception.
But
so
I'm
there's no. So there is no. So there is something about you that means that you are not a product of your environment.
My choices.
So what we know is the wonderful thing with inequality in society is we know what works. So we know that if you have a child that comes from an upper middle class background, that goes to a good school, that then is able to go to a good university and that has a network, the chances are this is how that person's life's going to end up. That person is going to end up as a productive member of society with many opportunities. We know if we pick a child like the ones that Majid is describing and we look at their life options, we know how they're going to end up. So my point is, I'm not interested in exceptions.
No, but
I'm interested in how...
Can I pick up on that point?
You can't.
I want to pick up on the point.
Because I'm just horrified by what I'm hearing.
Can we pick up on that?
No, because I want to pick up on the
Carol hasn't had a say.
I want to say the point you just made about opportunities being there for them. The lady who did this excellent report, called Kumba Bakima, she said that she started out on this to make this film, believing that these boys didn't have job opportunities. She says she has now entirely changed her mind. She said because what attracted them to the gangs is not having opportunity. Easy money, easy. They want nice cars, nice stuff, whatever. And
because that's what they think is available for them.
No, but this girl has just spent weeks with them. But
if they had other options, trust me, they would have.
Let me just say this as well. One thing in this report that really got to me, and this was a line from one of the boys. This really broke my heart. He says, I don't know what this war is about anymore. All I know is that if I step out of my area, the people want to kill me. If I go into theirs, they think. He said, this war isn't going to end. It's too deep now. And, you know, I believe that. I don't know what we can do. Sadiq Khan talks about youth centres. It's nonsense. That's not going to solve.
We've got a quote from Sadiq, actually. We need to hear from him, because he's come in for a huge amount of flack and grief because of this rise in crime all over London.
So.
Let's hear from him.
Crime's been going up since 2014. I became the mayor in 2016. And crime's been going up across the country, not just London. And we've got to do a number of things. Firstly, make sure young people know if you work hard, there is a helping hand and you can fulfil your potential. Give them the helping hand, but also explain to young people there's a consequence if you get rich quick unlawfully.
Interesting, though, he slightly backs up what Carol says, which is that they have options, and in fact they choose.
Yes,
they choose.
They do have options.
They choose getting rich quick.
Let's be real. Let's be honest. If one of those kids came to work here, let's think about how they would be treated, because we haven't created a society that fully integrates young men like this.
No, you're making excuses.
I'm not making excuses.
I think there's a really interesting word in K1's quote, which is family, and it's what we heard really from here. The takeaway is that they don't have proper functioning family networks. What the gang has replaced the family.
Yes.
Can I just say that let's go through some more stats here, just because it truly is alarming, and I just want to make the point that the whole point of me raising this was to say let's not play political football with it.
No,
so
let's find solutions.
Let's try and look for solutions. And so look, 80 people have been murdered in the first half of 2018 in London, and that's just shocking. There are an estimated 3,280 gang members in London, and almost 50% of murder victims and suspects in London in the last 18 months are young black men. I will add to that and say that a disproportionate number of them, a hugely disproportionate, are both victims and suspects under the age of 21.
This is...
Now, what I know, can I just say something? What I know is that even if it is, the reason I listed multiple reasons for what could be contributing to this is I don't think it's one thing or the other.
No,
if someone wants to get rich quick, it's usually because they're not rich. So, you know, that is kind of related to poverty. That could be that too. I said absent fathers. I've said drugs reform.
But then you're also missing out on systemic racism.
And we are,
because
and that's
I think your point at the end of your intro was so spot on in that we would not be accepting this from white middle-class kids.
But also,
we would
what I was
going
to say is that
we would be.
How can you say this?
We would be so.
Stop and search was stopped because, for a long time, because people accused the police of being racist for stopping these young black kids. You know, the bottom line is...
What's that got to do with what I'm talking about?
Last thing I want to say...
Racism. We tiptoe around racism.
I was to finish my sentence and say that, you know, to be honest, for me, whether it's about choices, whether it's about laziness, whether it's... At the end of the day, society is suffering, and if we remain solution-orientated, then it doesn't matter what choices, bad choices a 13-year-old makes.
What is the solution?
Well, so there's a direct correlation between cuts to police forces and rising crime. The police themselves are saying that. Cuts to local services and rising crime.
Please, can I ask a question before we move on? Because I know we've got to move on. Because I am fed up of being discarded as, oh, you're the exception, as though, like, I've got some miracle power as opposed to controlling my own brain.
You don't have
My point is...
Look at statistics.
My point is, at what point do you think that these people become responsible for the choices that they're making?
But you still love your sister, though, don't you?
I adore my sister.
And you still want a solution to...
My sister didn't wander around shooting people.
No, but you still want a solution to heroin addiction as well, even though she made a choice.
No, answer my question. At what point... My sister was responsible, by the way, for the choices that she made. When she used heroin, she was responsible for that.
I have got to exercise
please,
my
very
choice
quickly
now.
answer my question.
Michelle.
When do these people become responsible for picking up guns, walking around, shooting and stabbing? When is it their responsibility?
Chances are, most of the time, you are a product of your environment.
So it's never
so
their
whatever is normal around you, unless you are the exception, is what you usually do.
So it's never their responsibility.
So I'm not saying it's not their responsibility. I'm just saying that we are not doing anything to actually tackle the causes in terms of what is considered normal in the areas that those boys are growing up in, because those same boys are not doing the same in other parts of the country.
It helps us if we focus
I
on
must take responsibility. I must take responsibility for this panel. And I'm up next after the break, and I think we're getting dangerously complacent about the far right. It's been just over 2 years since MP Jo Cox was murdered in broad daylight in her constituency by a far-right extremist. In that short time, the far-right virus has entered the bloodstream of the body politic. To be an anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, nativist party is the new normal, and it's contagious. A quarter of voters in this country would back such a party. Leaders like Russia's Putin, the Philippines' Duterte, Turkey's Erdogan are not dictators, says a columnist in the Times newspaper. They are strongmen. Our timid politicians should copy, as, like Mussolini, at least strongmen get things done, like make the trains run on time. I don't know about you, but all this terrifies me. Internationalism, not nationalism, since the end of the Second World War, has given us golden eggs in the shape of longer, safer, happier, more comfortable lives. We must not allow the far-right narrative to become normalised. Otherwise, populism will turn into a suicide cult, killing off the golden goose of liberal, democratic capitalism. I've had a cue applauded.
OK. Yes, the rise of the far right worries me, but I think I know what the reason for it is, and I think it can be stopped. But I think you're wrong to say that people want to be internationalists. I think increasingly...
I didn't say people want to be internationalist. I said internationalism has given us prosperity in over 75 years.
People crave their own national identity. I think people want to run their own...
Not all people. We will see stats, but carry on.
Well, if you let me carry on, I will. Both of you interrupting, I'm trying to come back on you. So let me...
wants to be nationalist.
I didn't say that.
True.
I said I think people are turning away from internationalism and turning to wanting to run their own country. They want to run their own societies. They want to be dictated to by their own histories and traditions that the EU knows nothing about and cares even less about. And the EU has tried to quash all of that by making the one voice, the one state, the one law. And I think, Rachel, you know, what's the matter? Look around you, look at Europe, look where it's happening. It's happening in Germany, where Angela... Let me speak for a second, then you can all come in. Angela Merkel in Germany, she's hanging to power by a thread because of her policy on immigration. In the Netherlands, it's the same thing. In France,
we
Marine
can go around all the houses and see where nationalist parties are gaining traction.
Okay,
I agree. I'm not denying
I want to
that.
say one more thing, and then I'll go. Most people currently vote for the far right out of anger and frustration, not out of conviction. And I truly believe that is the case at the moment. But I think unless governments start listening to the people of their own country, the referendum result in this country was a direct result of the political and cultural elites ignoring the fears of the people, the voice of the people, the concerns of the people.
And the far right is using this as a wedge to bring in very unpleasant nastiness into the body politic.
But it can be stopped if governments start listening to people. To ordinary people out there, listen to them.
To that point on listening, I think that let's have a look at some figures on UKIP, because 12.6% of the vote in 2015 is what they got. And then there was a bit of listening done, Carol, and their vote share went down to 2% in 2017. I think there are ways, I infamously, because I never hear the end of it, suggested that Nigel Farage should be given a peerage, and my intention was to put him in the House of Lords. The reason why, June, is that when you put someone in the House of Lords, they're officially deemed retired. And they do nothing but gather cobwebs, and they're out from the political debate, and they can no longer rail against the establishment.
But the rules don't apply when Nigel Farage...
Well, apparently not.
Since the decline of UKIP, though, 38% would vote for a new right-wing party committed to Brexit, and I think 24% would vote for an explicitly far-right anti-immigrant...
Because people still aren't listening to the people. They're not listening. You know, now we have a bunch of still the political and cultural elites trying to overturn the biggest democratic decision this country's ever made. The government is not listening to people.
If I may just...
Can I just say what Steve Bannon, who used to run the far-right Breitbart, is now setting up a sort of ABBA-style, what he calls supergroup in Brussels to...
He calls it
promulgate his extremist anti-immigrant rhetoric. Let's have a listen to what Steve Bannon is saying.
Let them call you racist.
Laissez-vous appeler raciste.
Let them call you xenophobes.
Mais laissez-vous appeler xénophobes.
Let them call you nativist.
Laissez-vous les appeler nativistes.
Wear it as a badge of honor.
Portez-le comme un badge d'honneur.
Because every day we get stronger and they get weaker.
To hear this in 2018, supergroup, this is here we go again, back to the 30s.
You know, I was just going to say when I came in earlier that I was going to move to Steve Bannon because, of course, he was interviewed on LBC by Nigel Farage, and I, thankfully, was on immediately afterwards and had the chance to respond. I listened to everything he said, and what he believes in, it is, honestly, fascistic, and I use that term rarely. And here, I think it applies. He believes in this theory that he admitted on the interview called the fourth turning. He believes history turns at 4 crucial points. The fourth turning is violence. And he's actively, a bit like, you know, communist agitators, except he's the other end of the spectrum. He's actively agitating for that because he believes only through that violence can productive change emerge. And he believes that the last time this happened was World War II. These people are preparing for existential conflict. And I'm very, very worried.
I don't think it'll happen. I think it's not dangerous yet. I think it could become dangerous if people don't start listening. Merkel has now started to listen.
Austria has just said Jews need to start registering for kosher meat.
But, you know, but the far right can only exist because it taps into people's anger and frustration. If people were less frustrated and angry at their governments, they wouldn't be able to survive. They wouldn't have the oxygen to survive.
But what we could end up with, because I think Steve Bannon and co, this sort of alt-right movement, I think they realise that they're not going to be able to take over nations in the way that you're suggesting. He's going country to country and stirring up hatred in all of these extreme groups, and as a way they are then connected that way.
But they've always existed, June, they've always existed.
What they're trying to do is to create fear and almost be an
They've always existed, but they only flourish in times like this.
Do you think that he should be allowed to go around fomenting this kind of anti-race... Sorry, not anti-race. I can't get it right today. Racist sentiments across Europe.
I do think, let's just park Steve Bannon for a bit, but I do think that for a very long time, anybody who has dared to have a concern about uncontrolled immigration has been deemed racist and xenophobic, and they have had their perfectly legitimate concerns suppressed and stopped and dismissed. When you suppress a perfectly legitimate concern, then you naturally create an environment where you start off over here going, well, actually, my entire city is unrecognisable from the one that I've lived in my entire life, but I can't talk about that. Then over here comes somebody talking about this, albeit in a much more extreme voice than you're comfortable with. You start off by going, oh, that's a bit off. But then you start kind of gradually going, well, actually, he or she is the only person. Well, where it should end.
She's absolutely
right. Where it should end, you need to have a situation where you are allowing people to raise legitimate... You shouldn't be allowing people to go, oh, if you're Jewish, let's have, you know, whatever, or if you're Muslim, let's have... That's not a legitimate concern. But if what you're saying is, you know what, my entire city is completely different. There is entirely...
You keep saying legitimate. You keep saying legitimate, but actually anti-Semitism is not legitimate.
I know what I've seen it. Anti-Semitism, what I just said.
No, you actually mentioned...
No, but it's absolutely not legitimate to be anti-all Muslims, anti-all Jewish people, anti-all immigrants.
We haven't even got time to talk about what's going on in the Labour Party, have we,
But that's
June?
not how. You can't respond to my point by talking about anti-Semitism, because, you know, when you talk about people who are anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim, I actually don't think that's the situation. I think a lot of people are concerned by uncontrolled immigration and the facts and the impacts it had on their life. I think people are concerned
I don't think it's completely dissociated from what's going on.
I know we've got to move
on.
I just want to say that everything you've described sounds to me like a process of radicalisation. It happened. The same thing happened with Muslims after Iraq was invaded. We've got to be aware of it, but it doesn't excuse people turning to to people like Steve Bannon.
Gordon Brown told...
yeah, I know that, but I'm saying that everyone has grievances. Everyone has grievances. It doesn't justify resorting to extremism.
Anyway, you are watching The Pledge on Sky News. Coming up, why I'm beating the drum for more female headliners at festivals. The journey towards gender equality is most certainly a bumpy road, requiring the most robust 4x4 to navigate it. However, every few miles we see smooth roads ahead, and it seems that perhaps change may be on the horizon. Whether that's women's suffrage, legalisation of abortion, or women being allowed to enter professions and institutions that were once closed to us. But just when we think the smooth road may last for the whole of the journey, we encounter a massive pothole, such as the election of the misogynist in chief, lack of equal pay, or the Wireless Festival lineup. Earlier this year, the famed festival revealed its acts, and only 3 out of the 37 were women. In response to the social media backlash, an all-female stage was introduced. As nice a gesture as this is, it doesn't solve the bigger issue of the lack of female festival programmers. Last year, 80% of festival headliners were male, and women made up a mere 26% of UK festival performers. The only way to change this is to bring more women to the table, and in doing so, get more women on stage.
This was a revelation to me, June, and I am... the panel may be surprised to hear this. I am the rock critic for the Oldie magazine. And actually, this really made me think. Because it's the status quo. It's the red carpet again. And I suddenly thought, who have I been to see? Paul Simon, last weekend in Hyde Park. Brilliant.
I heard that was great.
Dave Gilmour. Van Morrison. And they're all... they're all men, probably white men, over the age of 70.
I went to see Bjork. I went to see Bjork in Hackney.
Oh, well done.
It was amazing.
You young groover.
Right, and so I'm very surprised. It was London Fields. I'm very surprised, or was it Victoria Park? Yeah, Victoria Park, all points east. I didn't realise this. So like you, as a revelation, I like to think of myself a bit in touch.
But can we apply the whole gender pay gap argument to something like rock and pop.
No, I don't think we have. Okay. I mean, surely the acts... I mean, I love you today, you know this, and I love the fact that you're trying to bring in gender equality into
it's a man's
I love it. I love it. But surely the acts that appear...
I'll blame it on Brexit.
...are the ones...
It's got to be Brexit.
Actually,
I blame it on the Prosecco you just
surely the acts that are booked are the ones that people are talking about, listening to, reading about. And you can't make people put an act into a festival if they don't want to see it. You can't just say she's got to be in there because she's a woman.
Having said that, wait, can I just point out something? On the same stage in one festival, the male band was paid 10 times what the female band on the same stage at the same festival.
But just to follow through on that point, only... this made me laugh. Only 3 solo women have won the Mercury Prize in 22 years. Now, maybe that's because they're not good enough to win the prize.
Come on.
Maybe.
Carol, speaking of that, weren't you in a rock band for many years?
It wasn't a rock band. It was a bit of a band, yeah. It was a long time ago.
Do we have
a picture of that? You're saying they weren't good because I wasn't any good. Is that what's going on?
But
May I say?
defending women from your...
I have a minority male on this table.
Go on.
Let me speak in defence of women.
You can't speak at all as being the minority male on this table.
Right, so I have every sympathy for the economic arguments made, usually. In this instance, though, I think back to the film, like, say, films like Black Panther, Marvel's Black Panther. A lot of people in Hollywood said there was no market for a film like that. Then they made it, and it smashed
If you build it, they will come.
Right, I went to see Bjork as a female, and she was the headliner of the All Points East Festival.
Was she good?
It was amazing, and so the point is that I think when you so I don't believe in quotas.
Falling down on the job.
Hold on. I don't believe in quotas. I do believe in equality of opportunity as opposed to equality of outcome. And I think what I'm hearing you say, June. So I know we disagree on quotas, but what I'm hearing you say there in what you just said was if we create those opportunities.
It's like investing in
tennis
or football.
And
music is subjective. You can't legislate for people's taste.
It's not about legislating. The problem is what you have is a lot of the people that put on festivals and the ones that are blokes.
Yeah, I know.
And actually, if you had
that.
more women in those positions, they just would book more women.
It's blokes who book blokes who need to pay last year's tax bill.
The blokes who book blokes because they know that's how they're going to make the money.
Before we go to Michelle, sorry, there is this chap, Melvin Ben, director of Festival Republic. He said, we'd love to see more female acts on the festival roster in the future. However, he says, there is a bigger industry issue at the heart of the debate on line-up diversity, with fewer female acts available at all.
Can we see Lily Allen's tweet, actually, in response to this very issue, where, let's have it up on screen and I'll explain it. This is the wireless poster. She blanked out all the names of the male artists appearing over 3 days, and it left only 3 women.
It's a fantastic tweet.
In the festival.
It is brilliant, isn't it? Michelle, and then I'll bring in a quote.
I want to go to a festival. I just want to go listen to the bands that I like.
Playing the songs you know.
Yeah, but I couldn't care less if they're man, woman, mixed. I don't really care. If I like your music, then I want to go see you. And I just think it's a little bit...
But there are lots of female artists that should have been booked that
But I think it's a little bit patronising to say if there's a woman on the board, they would therefore book more female artists. I find that quite...
I
find that quite patronising.
It's not patronising. I tell you what.
Why would you assume if there was a female on the board, she would book female...
Yes, she would. OK, when you go into any kind of meeting or business room or whatever, I'm sure it's not going to impact the way that you perform, but I'm sure you notice that there aren't that many working class people in the room if you're one of the only ones in there.
Well, I work in tech and I'm pretty much always the only
Precisely, you're aware of it. So my point is, it wouldn't have even occurred to those men that, hang on a minute, we've got 37 artists, but there's only 3 that are women. So I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying if you actually have more women in the room, it won't happen.
Which 3 female artists do you think that are exceptional that we're missing?
From the wireless?
Yeah.
Oh!
Bjork wasn't there.
Well, Bjork, Dua Lipa, Mabel.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Let me tell you, I don't know who...
Put her on.
I don't know. I know Bjork. I don't know the second one.
Jess Glynn is the biggest selling artist of the past 5 years.
Yeah, she should have been on there.
I went to a place the other day and I asked them what was getting ready for, and she said that the lady said, oh, we've got Mabel playing tonight.
She's huge.
And I went, oh, awesome. I went upstairs and I went, who's Mabel? I've never even heard of her.
Might be a generation
But the kids have.
I'll give you, historically, I think there was a lack of opportunity for
women.
Were you
really in a band?
Yes, she was.
Oh, please. There's a lack of opportunity for women to get into bands.
Yeah.
But I think that doesn't exist anymore.
No, but
And I think the media doesn't help because we refer to girl bands and
Yeah,
girl singers.
good point.
So we're not helping.
Yeah.
What did you used to sing?
I used to
It
sing.
feels like a little bit- it's our last one before
I was
the
in a band a
holiday.
long time ago. In
it
fact,
one
I
of those
sang in the
80s
same group of people with Sting was playing guitar. We used
Give us a little
It was a
example.
serious thing.
Give us a sample of one of your
I'm
songs.
not, absolutely.
Was your guitar?
Why?
He wasn't my guitarist. We used to sing and play in a thing called the Newcastle Big Band. And every Sunday morning we'd all gather and we'd sing songs.
Do you know Jimmy Nail?
I do know Jimmy Nail, yes. And I know everyone. And Brian Ferry was around at the time as well.
Tell me that, Carol.
And, that's how old I am.
Okay, Mighties, look at where they are.
Yeah.
Carol,
But you know, I remember years and years ago, I had to go and interview Sting after he got famous, and before he left to go to the Bright Lights, you know, said, you know, you'll be back and you know, you'll be back shortly and with their tail between your legs. Well, he was back 6 months later with a #1 hit, and I was told to go and interview him, which was actually a bit hard.
How are the mighty fallen?
Yes.
Well, all risen, actually. She's on the pledge now.
Exactly.
OK, so that's nearly it for this week and this season. But before we go, there's just time for this. A lot of people might think that TV is a glamorous business. The stars turn up in flash cars, they get pampered in swanky dressing rooms. Everything is done in one take and it all runs smoothly. But while Majid does spend 3 hours in makeup, and Michelle does demand that everybody speaks to her, has a northern accent, it's not often as seamless as it may seem. As with everything, things don't always go to plan.
Can I have my autocue?
It's a completely irrelevant graphic, that's the trouble.
Everyone's a producer.
Whatever the it is, this is what I'm doing.
Gonna sneeze. I'm gonna sneeze.
I'm so bored. I was contemplating falling asleep, but I thought it would be rude.
What the are we talking about?
Clearly, Damien Green, who...
Yeah, that's the microphone.
I thought it was your wallet that made that much noise. That's much heavier.
I've been dragged on the floor if it was my wallet.
Half the same.
It's... I forgot who I was, sorry.
Get your ample backside off your chairs and yell, I'm not going to take this anymore!
I go to all-inclusive. I've just been doing beer aerobics. You have to do 10 star jumps, swim a length, 10 press-ups, swim back and down a pint, and then you have to burp into a megaphone.
That's very good.
Sorry.
I want you to go curly again. I think curly suits you.
OK, curly's
really good.
Yeah.
Join the curly.
I'll join the curly brigade.
Glasses, I was looking at.
You're like, who's that? Anyway, that's it. Not only for this week, but for this season of The Pledge. We hope you enjoyed the series. Make sure you set your reminders for our first episode back in September. Thanks for watching and have a lovely summer.